Whole Foods Market has the satisfying lunch you're looking for. Level up lunch boxes with Wallet Happy 365 by Whole Foods Market snacks, like organic vanilla animal cookies, organic string cheese, and more. Hey, you have to eat too. Hit the prepared foods department and try the spicy red pepper salmon, or treat yourself to pizza from the Hot Bar. Either way, remember to bring home a rosemary lemon chicken family meal for an easy dinner that hits the spot. Shake things up at Whole Foods Market.
Hey, all cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
Josh, that was a banter weekend, as some people would call it. Certainly from a fantasy perspective, there were some highs and lows, but the matches as well. Just some really dodgy performances.
From
some top teams.
FPL wise, it was a tricky one, right? It was a great weekend for XG and XA underachievers, right? A lot of people looked good and did not actually give you anything fantasy wise. I think I'm on 39 points right now, which is above average. And I actually, because I was like, am I like even on a green arrow? And I actually am, but I started at 3.6 million or something going into this game week. So yeah. I'm up like 800,000 places. So I feel pretty good about that. And if he plays, I have Gabriel center back, Arsenal center back Gabriel tomorrow. You can't just say Gabriel, right? Because it's like there's three Gabriels on Arsenal. Yeah, Gabriel, Martinelli, Jesus.
Call him G1, G2, G3, maybe.
Yeah, I just struggle to pronounce his last name, and so I don't try. It's like I want to say Margulies, like Juliana Margulies, but I don't think that's okay. Right.
So we've got the Game of Thronesification of the Gabriels, where you're like Gabriel of some landed estate somewhere. He is Gabriel of the center back clan.
It's like Pliny the Elder, the whatever. Yeah, exactly. Precise. So we've got Gabriel. I know you've got Saliba, and I think we both have Saka. Is that right? Those are the players we've got in the Arsenal game. Okay, so
those are the guys.
So it was a mixed bag. I think Brighton basically. Brighton were my performers this week. I think it was 12 from Matoma. I think roughly the same. I don't have my actual team. I should pull my team up here. I think it was 12 from Matoma. 11 from Estupinan, 12 from Matoma. And so that felt good. I mean, I also have Bruno and Rashford, and I got 3 combined points from those two. Nicolas Jackson, 1 point there. And now the question is, are we keeping the faith with them? I mean, I think you have those same 3 players, do you not? You have Bruno, Rashford.
I do.
This is relevant for me and you. I think it's relevant for most people listening, for many of them at least. I think most people have at least one of those 2 Man United players. And I think the struggle is to see them. Okay, I think it's an interesting moment right now because the numbers are fine, if not good. They play Forest at home in game week 3, right? Excellent fixture, would be for any squad, but they don't look great, right? Like it's hard to look at this Man United team, and I guess you could be like, well, if it weren't for an excellent goalkeeper performance, maybe they scored a couple, and maybe I'm not being generous enough, but I just haven't really been kind of blown away by Man United in either of their first 2 matches this season. And so to be holding on to 17.5 million worth of Man United attacking players when there are these really cheap options out there, right? Bryan Mbeumo comes to mind, along with many, Phil Foden, many others. So how are you feeling right now about Rashford, Bruno? I mean, Nicolas Jackson we kind of put aside. They play Luton Town in game week 3. I'm not dropping him for that. And, we can talk later about whether you want to buy him or not, if there's other options to consider, but certainly wouldn't be dropping him.
Yeah, Manchester United, I thought it was a concerning performance against Spurs. Going back to you hinting at the XG, XA, I think that kind of betrays what I was seeing on the pitch. So Bruno was playing lots of great passes, but they were these Hollywood passes that communicate to me that nothing is coming easy. in this Manchester United attack. The only way that they could break the Spurs line, and it's like Spurs were the sum of their parts. They were great on the weekend, but their defense is not great. There should be no issue for players of Rashford's caliber and Bruno to at least get into the box with some better chances, more easily worked. And it just all seemed really difficult and plodding. And as you got into the second half, I think it got worse, because then you see from Bruno tons of misplaced passes. And
desperate Bruno.
Yeah. And it was really, you could see the frustration really bubbling up more than you typically do with Bruno. Rashford, I saw him, like, what he likes to do is just square up on a defender. He likes to turn, square up on a defender, and then dither on the ball. And Rashford, I think he had a terrible match, and he couldn't win any one-on-one challenges. He didn't have any clear-cut chances.
He wasn't great in the opening match either, right? In the Wolves match, I thought it was a pretty indifferent performance from him in that one too.
To be fair to him, though, they're trying to do a makeshift sort of front four, because Højlund is out injured. That wasn't part of the plan. Who are we playing in the false nine? The fact that Martial came in at the end of that Spurs match, does that say to you, Josh, that Ten Hag was just like, screw this, I'm done. Like, we don't even deserve points? Or is he just...
I think he just wanted a little bit of structure, right? I just don't think that, Rashford's working up there. And the Højlund thing, I guess, is slightly concerning, right? You never want to see unknown return date. So they just... Like, did they scout this guy before? When did he get this back injury? Let's say, so it's a little. Who knows? I mean, I guess that would be the worry. Is like, is this going to persist? And honestly, Forrest have put in some decent performances too. And so it's like, I get that you sort of like your brain immediately goes, oh, it's Forrest away. Like that's got to be an incredible fixture. But given how they look at the moment, it's just hard for me to look at this match and think, oh yeah, they're going to get 6 or 7 past Forest, right? Maybe they get 2. And I have to be honest, I'm not really strongly leaning towards dropping either Bruno or Rashford. I think I just hold for one more week and then decide what to do. I have 2 transfers going into game week 3. I don't really have any pressing problems. My team actually looks pretty good. So I think what I will likely do is make one transfer, and I may actually move Watkins. That's a transfer I'm strongly considering. Not that he's like a terrible player to hold, but it's Burnley away, Liverpool away in the next 2. And Burnley away is okay, I guess. It's kind of hard to have a read on Burnley, right? They've only played 1 match so far in the season because
against Man City.
Yeah, against Man City, exactly, and then they couldn't play because Luton Town's the grounds weren't ready yet for a match. So we don't really know what to expect from them. But they've had 2 weeks to prep for this Villa match, right? I kind of think they're going to come out playing reasonably well, and so I don't know. We can talk more about forward options in a bit because I think there are some really interesting ones, including another. Again, whenever you play Man City, it's sort of it's tricky to evaluate, right? But I'm actually kind of interested in Isak. I think that it's, they play Liverpool at home in game week 3, and Liverpool have decided that they're just not going to play, a right back, and it's amazing to me. It's incredible. Like, how can this persist? Like, do they just have to find a replacement for Trent, like somebody else to play as right back? It's like they've bent this team out of shape in order to get him to play as a midfielder because he's just not a good. I mean, he was responsible for that opening goal. I know it wasn't a great pass from Van Dijk, but I mean, you just can't.
He couldn't control it in the midfield.
So
everyone calling for Trent to be some sort of defensive ball playing, deep lying midfielder, you've got to at least be able to cushion the ball if you're playing in that position, because you'll be under pressure coming out of the back. It's funny, Man City is doing something similar where they're not playing a right winger. They're only playing a right back. Kyle Walker's task against Newcastle was basically, all right, you're just going to do the whole right side. That's your job.
It's interesting. I don't know if that was like a Bernardo Silva enforced situation, maybe, right? Because he would typically be over there. I don't know, but let's talk briefly about we're kind of like just talking broadly about everything right now, and I think just to give people kind of a roadmap for today's pod, we're going to look at game week 3. We're also going to talk about early FPL performers that we've overlooked so far this season. And there's a handful of them that I think we should talk about. I mean, Mbeumo is just staring me in the face right now, Brandon. It was the 92nd minute goal. That's the one that really gets you. You know, it's like when you don't have a highly owned player, you're like, well, you got a pen. Okay, fine. I can handle that. But the second goal, because it's 3 bonus. He gets that clean sheet bonus point too. That's the one that's a killer. But good on to everybody who had him, because he was a much discussed pick early on the season, and I think that he in preseason, I should say, and it just with the benefit of the hindsight, he was a clear pick, and he looks fantastic, and he's certainly the player that if I were to just like throw my hands up and give up on the Man United midfield, he'd be the player that I'd be looking at for my transfer. Maybe that's a little obvious, but
yeah. And the feeling is, did I miss out on the points already? Well, they have 2 home fixtures in the next 2 with Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, both at home, and then they get Newcastle away in game week 5, followed by Everton home, Forest away. So it's still a really great
4
run.
and 5. Yeah.
So if you're like us, missing out on those Brentford attacks, and Wissa has to be mentioned as well, because I am with you on the Watkins transfer. Like Watkins has returned 2-2, but only assists, and I don't think he's looked very confident in front of goal for whatever reason.
No, the fact that his sub came on and scored seconds after getting on the pitch was a little discouraging for Watkins owners, I think.
Few too many hungry like a wolf jokes for my taste with the Duran substitution, but that's on everybody else out there. You'll not hear that here. But Nicolas Jackson has scored a total of 2 points to Watkins' 10. Yet with that Luton home match, the ceiling remains higher than Jackson, or higher than Watkins for Jackson, right? So yeah, well, Watkins to Wissa, Watkins to Alvarez is something I want to talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, I gotta move somebody. Alvarez too. Right. Well, anyway, we're gonna do the pod before the pod starts if we're not careful here. But let me just, I do want to quickly. Actually, you know what? I'll save it. I want to talk about Phil Foden, but let's save that for the main part of the pod, because I think that's an interesting discussion point. I feel like he's somebody I definitely overlooked myself. I do, however, quickly want to mention a comment from GP, because wild cards are going to start entering into people's thoughts. It's not where I am yet, but I may be there soon. I'm happy to wild card. Every year I'm like, maybe I'll just hold my wild card until game week 18, get all set up for the festive fixtures, and then I blow it by game week 5. And it's fine. So GP says, what do you think are the good signals to look out for, or rules of thumb to follow, when it comes to deciding when to trigger your first wild card? So if you're starting to get angsty, whatever, about your squad, what is the trigger that gets you to finally go ahead and push that wild card button?
I feel like at this stage of the season, it's injuries, because an injury means you're guaranteed 0 points from a player. At least with these players, I mean, we can just use Nicolas Jackson as an example for all these questions. I think all these players who are deeply frustrating and haven't come good, they still will play next week. They still could get you points. But if they're injured, Chukwuemeka, he ain't getting you points next week. So as far as wild card triggers go, there will be people who've got Reece James, Tyrone Mings, and a handful of other injuries. Then I think you're getting into that wild card conversation. If you don't have a lot of injuries, I think either you keep the faith on some of these players and trust the rationale why you brought them in, or just take a -4 or a -8 to do some quick surgery. Because I think that the wild card is going to be handy a month from now. I mean, we haven't seen, if you think you have problems now, you don't know the half of it. And now I think you're more fond, Josh, and I don't disagree with this thought process of just play an early wild card. Like what's the big deal? It doesn't have to be a big deal. How truly powerful is the wild card? You really can change the trajectory of your team by playing it. But I feel like when I played my wild card in game week 3 or 4 in seasons past, it's because I just missed a whole raft of players I needed. And
Yeah.
I'm not seeing explosive Leicester-esque champions players at this point. It really is Brentford that we have missed the boat on, and that's it.
I think that's right. I mean, honestly, if I just did 2 transfers this week and I just turned Bruno into Mbeumo and Watkins into Wissa, I probably would be in a better position, right? Just do those 2 things. I think there's a couple things I think about. One is, like you said, I don't think we know quite yet who we really want. I mean, that's part of the theme of this week's pod, right? Is who do we overlook and why? And I think we'll talk more about some of the players that you might target if you were on a wild card. But I think sometimes, to me, it's as easy as I just look at who my squad is playing that game week, and if it's bad, I'm ready to make the move. It can be that simple, which is just, I don't actually think game week 3 is probably not a great time to wildcard. I have to imagine most people listening, if you actually look at your game week 3 squad, the way you've got it set up right now, it probably looks pretty good. I mean, I don't know about you. I have a great looking squad right now. I mean, I sort of like everything. I mean, if I were the weakest spot in my squad would be probably Jordan Pickford, right? And he's still home to Wolves, and so I don't see that as an absolutely urgent, pressing move. So looking at that, I mean, I will just almost never wild card if I like the squad that I have for that particular game week, right? I wouldn't wild card for price rises or wild card because there's some highly owned player that's delivering or anything like that. I mean, I think, like you said, I think in most cases, even if you really want like a particular player, it's better to just take like a -4 to bring them in, right? Assuming you can't do it with a regular transfer. I think that's generally the movement. But all the players I want right now are cheap. Like all the players that I want would free up so much money in my squad, right? If I go from Watkins to Wissa, then that's 2 million right there, 1.9. If I go from Rashford to Mbeumo, that's 2.4, right? It's like I could free up 4 million with those 2 transfers. So I don't think anyone's like really itching to get Mo Salah right now, given where Liverpool are. And so I just don't see like a really strong rationale for wildcarding this early either. With that said, it just sort of depends on, I mean, you and I are talking as people who did a lot of preseason thinking, this is like, we played fantasy for more than a decade, or played fantasy for more than a decade. We sort of knew a pretty like good baseline squad to go into. But if this is your first season and some of the players that we're talking about in this pod are players that you just don't have, I mean, maybe go ahead, right? I mean, if you don't have, like, I could see an argument for wild carding early if you just hate the shape of your squad and the way it looks this game week, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to try to triple up on Man City, for example, right? And play Sheffield United and just kind of go for it. I don't think that's an absolutely insane place to be. I mean, you just get like Foden, Holland, and Alvarez, and just assume that you're going to get like 2 goals and an assist out of those 3.
I'm thinking of our friend Amy, who joined our friend league and this is her first season. She's a longtime West Ham supporter. It's her first time playing FPL. So she's not like super familiar on what's going on with the other teams in the Premier League. I took a quick look at her team, and then I would be interested to hear from the listeners, like what their approach would be in this situation. How much do you tell your friend, like, no, you've got to get this player, this player, this player? I chose to offer like just a couple pieces of advice, because part of the education is just learning as you go. So I saw Amy had Emerick Laporte as her City defender, and I was just like, just FYI, this dude's not going to play. He's off to another league. Get rid of him. She also did have Philippe Coutinho. There, I want to welcome and be supportive of those managers. If you are that person, you don't have to raise your hand, but we are giving you tacit permission to play a wild card, because you probably learned a lot just in 2 weeks.
Yeah, this person is my friend too, and I saw her today, coincidentally, and I talked her into bringing in Mbeumo. So the same thing. I was like, don't go crazy here, but you just, I think she had Højbjerg, Pierre Emil, and I was like, I just don't. Yeah. I don't know that you're going to get a ton of points there. I would, you have enough money. I would just move on to Mbeumo. And again, like I don't think you need to be radical there, but I think it's good to keep that in perspective, because sometimes I feel like when I see people talk on forums or whatever, there's a sort of baseline feeling that everyone has 8 of the same 11 players, and then you look at other people's squads and you're like, actually, this isn't true. It's just kind of this little world. And so anyway, so with that said, let's get into the main part of the pod here. I did want to quickly say thank you to our newest Patreon supporters, Bryan. We got a bunch of new patrons this week, and you're absolutely welcomed, encouraged, enthusiastically encourage Brandon to join. Yes. You can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. You get an extra podcast each week. You could talk with us and others on the Discord. There's still time to join a bunch of the leagues that various members have set up, including, of course, our own Patreon supporter league. And thank you to James Langley, Daniel Hart, D.A., Nick Stulig, Richard Nyquist, returning. I think he might have just updated his credit card, Brandon, but it says it's a new patron.
Well done,
so
Richie.
I'm keeping him in there.
Way to keep on that bank account information.
Yeah, exactly. Way to keep it updated. Max P, Stink Pickle FC, I like that one. Erland Nyarsrod, Nils Isak Rindal, Brennan and Alex. And Brennan and Daniel Hart, by the way, Brennan, are 2 new producer patrons. So excellent. Extra big thanks to those 2. And you got singled out for pronouncing someone's name correctly on last week's pod. It's rare. Very proud of us. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
It's rare we get lauded for correctly pronouncing. So I was beaming with pride on our behalf.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. We'll get back and talk about players that we overlooked in preseason and what we want to do about them now.
There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform that you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because Indeed does the hard work for you. They show you the candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post so you can hire faster. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports, and support the show by saying that you heard it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Whole Foods Market has the satisfying lunch you're looking for. Level up lunch boxes with Wallet Happy 365 by Whole Foods Market snacks, like organic vanilla animal cookies, organic string cheese, and more. Hey, you have to eat too. Hit the prepared foods department and try the spicy red pepper salmon, or treat yourself to pizza from the hot bar. Either way, remember to bring home a rosemary lemon chicken family meal for an easy dinner that hits the spot. Shake things up at Whole Foods Market.
All right, Bryan, we're back. So there's some familiar faces leading overall points right now that I feel like we both overlooked, or at least I overlooked. We could talk about Phil Foden, who you were on early. Although I guess I had Foden, you had Matoma, so you and I can both we both got
You're
one.
coming. You're
and
coming out
missed
ahead
one.
there at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a little ahead at the moment. But I guess the question is, why did we overlook them, and do we feel differently now? And again, if you've got 2 transfers this week, or 1, or you're looking to maybe possibly wild card, these are some of the players that you may want to consider, right? I mean, what do you do when you wild card? You look at you should look at fixtures, of course, and what's ahead, but also let's look at top performers. Are there 4 and 4.5 million defenders who are coming good? I mean, right now we have 2 starting 4 million goalkeepers. One of them got a pen save today, so it probably somewhat semi-artificially inflates his numbers a little bit. Do you think Enzo is still on pens after that? I actually thought it was a pretty good pen. It's a good pen save. It wasn't bad.
I don't think there was much conviction in that pen for me, personally. And, they say this always in the commentary, like that was a good height for the keeper. The last place you want to put it is basically like right where the keeper can reach it. So I'm not willing to give Areola that much credit.
It's still hard to say, but you see the England pen save, by the way, in the Women's World Cup?
I missed it, and I haven't watched any of the highlights. Yeah, commiserations to all of our English listeners, and celebrations to our Spanish listeners.
There you go. Yeah, well done. Yeah.
I play both sides. Yeah, I'm sure Enzo is, miss one pen. That's just going to happen. It's going to happen to most pen takers in the league, because there's a lot of terrible pen takers.
It's happened to Salah. Yeah. Do we have to call Mo Salah a terrible pen taker now? He's missed 3 in a row.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
he's up there with Watkins and Mitrovic, and we don't have Mitrovic to kick around anymore.
Yeah.
But I think that's just bad psychologically. If Pochettino turns to Enzo and says, "Well, you missed one, on to the next."
That's true.
Enzo has got to be being groomed to be the leader, the future captain of that team. He's quarterbacking them right now. He looks phenomenal. That team clearly needs a real leader, and it helps, I think, to have that leader be in the middle of the pitch. So, I'm into captain logistics here. So I think that works. I think Enzo still takes the pens.
Yeah,
5 million. So
Well, I was about to say, the price isn't bad. I mean, he's a slightly expensive 5th mid, depending on how your squad is set up, but not a bad pick. I think that, especially like you said, if he stays on pens, and I agree that he's playing really well. What do you think about? I guess we'll just get into this now. What do you think about Raheem Sterling? I mean, like, I thought he was better in this match than he was in the Liverpool match, and obviously Sterling has his stands and people who it's a little bit like Mesut Ozil, where it's like you kind of know when Raheem Sterling's having a frustrating match because people like leap to Twitter to explain why. If you don't think he's playing well, you don't understand football or whatever. Sure. But like, it's like these incredible runs. He had one absolutely spectacular run that Jackson basically whiffed on in the match, and then it was annoying, and then it fell to Chilwell, who I thought kind of gently rolled it in. It was like way too, I felt like he really could have scored there.
I remember that sequence because it was like, oh man, as a Jackson owner, like, dang, I wish he would have connected with that. And then, surprise, it rolls to a player who's going to get more points.
unmarked.
A wonderful consolation. And then, he didn't really put a lot behind it. Yeah, I think Sterling, my take on Sterling prior to the season was this man is washed. Watching the Liverpool match, my feelings weren't changed. But I thought he did play better today.
Yeah.
But his runs just weren't productive. He has like Anthony Robinson levels of crossing ability these days. He's either ballooning the cross over the 6-yard box. He lacks the control that he had 5 years ago and is going to dribble it into touch.
You wonder if his confidence is a little low or something like that. It's like he's not like I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get like into psychology corner here too much, but it's just like it feels like he's not like in flow. But the runs are good, and so I think that's encouraging. I think if you're a Chelsea supporter or if you're I guess. Well, honestly, I mean, as someone who has Nicolas Jackson, I want Sterling to be at his absolute best, right? Like that's probably going to draw defenders. In theory, if he's going to beat these defenders sometimes and get crosses like the one that Jackson nearly connected with. Yeah, it's a real sliding doors moment because if he scored, it's just the way that match shook out, kind of strange. It was kind of a strange one, right? I felt like Chelsea were actually pretty in control of that match, at least at times. And then I don't know. I mean, maybe you can just credit West Ham for a really strong counterattacking performance. I thought
West Ham
Antonio's second
out-hustled
goal was
them.
impressive.
I think West Ham were quicker to the balls. They were just played a more muscular game. They did have to play on the counter, but even when they went down to 10 men, they still seemed like the stronger team. And that is, I think, exposing the huge flaw in Chelsea right now is none of these players know each other. Sterling is probably putting in bad balls into the 18 or 6 box because he just doesn't know where anybody's going to be because there's no chemistry of any kind with this team right now.
The loss of Nkunku, I sort of waved the Nkunku thing away just a little bit because I was like, well, he wasn't even really part of the, I mean, he just played in the summer. It wasn't like this is the long beating heart of Chelsea or something like that, right? It's like he had just joined, but I really think they are missing Nkunku as kind of a focal point for that attack. And like you said, maybe Enzo Fernandez fills in a little bit there. But I think fantasy wise, I was really considering going with a third Chelsea player for this Luton Town match. And I was looking at possibly getting Malo Gusto as sort of a speculative punt. Like even if they bring in somebody to replace Reece James, like spend some money to bring somebody in. I was just like, well, they're not going to, I could certainly get to the next couple of fixtures with someone like Malo Gusto. But now I'm just slightly concerned that because of that like lack of cohesion that you're talking about, that they might just end up conceding a cheap goal or two in the next couple of matches. And so it makes me.
Robert Sanchez looked pretty bad today.
Yeah,
too.
I know. There's another keeper they're looking at now too. So he kind of is off the table, I think. But it's hard for me to watch this match today. And maybe there's too much recency bias and they were away or whatever. But like, it's hard for me to think, oh yeah, I want to be doubled up on this defense. That's just not how I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah. I think we just have to. You put your chips in with. I think
with the two.
I feel like the right strategy is still Chilwell and Jackson. You get the farthest guy forward along with the best player.
Yeah.
And I
the
thought
early sub for
truly bizarre sub. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought it was a weird sub too. I don't think it helped either. So maybe that's encouraging. Maybe you wonder if Chilwell was nursing an injury or something like that.
Mudryk is that he ain't it. It's not. That's not happening. So,
but Mudryk was already on the pitch, right? Mudryk was on for Chukwuemeka. So when Chilwell got subbed, wasn't it for Caicedo? Wasn't like it was?
Yeah, but you're not wrong. I think though the logic would be basically Mudryk is gonna not share the left side of the pitch with anybody.
Okay, got it.
So you're going to put all your creative faith on the left side of the pitch in Mudryk, and maybe Chilwell just refuses to play with him. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Malo Gusto finished with a. I do like, Brendan, that I can now quickly. I mean, I know you could always go to FB Ref to get the stats, but it is nice that you can open up the fantasy page now, and they have the XG and XA stats just right there for you. So just Malo Gusto had a 0.05 XA and a 0.1 XG. 0.05 XG, 0.05. I got to learn how to read these stats in this page. 0.5 XG, 0.5 XA, 0.1 X goal involvement, Brandon. So,
okay.
multiply that by 10 and you're looking at a goal. So hey, over the course of 10 weeks, we might get something out of Mr.
I think
Mr.
it was
let's see,
Ryan O'Hanlon, who used to write for Grantland, soccer guy. He had this tweet of like, well, if you amortize this West Ham result for Chelsea, the score is actually 0.00001 to 0.00003. So it's not that bad when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a way. And it's sort of funny, the glee I feel like some people take in relying almost purely on XG and XA I mean, I do find it useful. I don't want to sound like I'm some, anti. And I mean, we've had people on this season on the pod, right? We had our friend Elevenify on the pod to chat with us. But it is sort of funny the way there's almost a feeling sometimes like I don't care about my fantasy points. I just want my players to have good underlying stats. And I'm like, I think you can have room there. There's room for both. You can enjoy the underlying stats and be annoyed when
they're tied together. I don't understand. They're tied together.
Well, they are tied together, but the people who are absolutely leaping to explain how ludicrous it would be to drop Bruno Fernandes ahead of this Forest match, as if we weren't watching these matches with our own eyes and seeing how how unstructured and sort of this attack does not look good. It is hard. Like, if I have 20% of my team, like my 100 million starting value, like a little less than that, right? 17% is tied up in two players that aren't delivering. Fixtures don't solve everything. They solve a lot, but I think it is reasonable to be like, man, they look bad, and I just want players who are like in really good form that also have good fixtures right now. I don't think that's like a crazy stance.
It is the Dusan Tadic rule when Tadic was at, was it Southampton?
I think I've got like 10, 11 years ago now.
Everyone was always waiting for the perfect fixture run for Dusan Tadic because his numbers were always off the charts. And sure enough, you'd bring him into your fantasy team and he just wouldn't produce. I think it's a little different when you're talking about Southampton 10 years ago versus a top 4 team in the Premier League. When you're following those XAXG numbers, you expect them to come good at some point. I do think to be favorable about Manchester United, they had a horrible start last season as well. And Ten Hag figured it out with effectively the same players plus Wout Weghorst. So I don't know. He'll figure it out.
I'm probably going to keep them both, but I just think there's a very reasonable argument, especially if you have two of them, a very reasonable argument to just say, go ahead and drop one and get Mbeumo, right? or get Phil Foden. And I keep teasing this Foden conversation. I don't even have that much Foden material here. I don't know why I'm teasing this for so long. I have nothing to say except I was really impressed by how well he played in that Man City Newcastle match. And he could have had a gigantic score. Right? Like he could have been in like the 20s or something like that if all of the chances that he was involved in turned into
Holland
goals.
Had two balls served up on silver platters. It's true.
Yeah. So you have Foden. He's an overlooker for me. I overlooked him. So you must be feeling pretty good about having him now, right? They play away to Sheffield United in game week 3. What are your thoughts?
I'm not going to claim to be smart on this one because I have Foden in my team because of the game week 1 deadline leak. Okay. Foden is confirmed to start. I will take him as a punt for game week 1 against Burnley. And then I assume he's going to be a rotation headache from that point forward. He then plays in Athens in the Super Cup final an entire 90 minutes, which furthers my headache. And then there is the KDB injury. And how is this going to, we talked about this last week, how is this going to impact Alvarez? How is this going to impact Foden? What I learned watching that Newcastle match was Foden is doing in this city with a City team without De Bruyne what he did in the Champions League final against Inter, where he has come in to fill that playmaker role. And then Alvarez is kind of buzzing around and Haaland is the target man. And Foden in that Newcastle match was relishing this leadership midfield general role. This is in a positive way that you did not see somebody like Bruno Fernandes relish. And anything that you as a coach would want to look for in a performance like that Foden delivered. He was creating chances for his teammates. He was pressing. He was running back. He was doing all of the things he needed to do with gusto, Josh.
Yep.
So that's like
Malo gusto.
X gusto was on another level for Foden. And I think that that's going to just be really important. We talked about how City without Bernardo Silva, they don't have a right winger properly. And
Yep.
Alvarez and Foden are kind of just sort of like freestyling sometimes in that area of the pitch. But it's just super important, I think, that Alvarez and Foden are both playing well for this team to tick along. So I think Foden goes from rotation headache and kind of a gamble. I think after that Newcastle match, he is now you should really consider him as a really affordable value asset to get into the top team.
1 million cheaper.
7.5. Yeah.
1 million cheaper than Bruno, 1.5 million cheaper than Rashford. So it's definitely some temptation there. I am really strongly looking at Alvarez this week. So kind of a similar, I mean, you did mention Alvarez a little bit too, but I think Alvarez is in a similar position. And I sort of just partially, honestly, it is because I have two transfers and I don't really want to let one go to waste. But I mean, Alvarez is 6.5 million. I feel like he's pretty locked into that team as well right now, given some of the injuries and how he's played, honestly, so far too. So I'd free up 1.5 million to bring in Alvarez, which is kind of crazy that you can get this guy for that cheap, right? And then you look at the run ahead for Man City, and it's pretty much. It's terrific. I mean, they have just a terrific start of the season, right? Especially once you look past that Newcastle match. Sheffield away in game week 3, Fulham at home in game week 4. One of our our friend Andrew said that Fulham had the worst X goals allowed of any team in the Premier League so far. So certainly you'd expect some chances for Man City.
It's 2 games, Andrew.
It is 2 games. I know. Yeah, that's true. Your Brandon is a Fulham supporter, but still, you have to admit it's not ideal.
Fulham looked awful against Brentford. We won't let them get away with that. So fair play.
Yeah, and they did concede a lot of shots to Everton too, but it's regardless. Yeah. So, so Fulham at home, West Ham away, and certainly you'd expect goals in that match. Forest at home in game week 6, Wolves away in game week 7. So even if things start to stabilize a little bit in that Man City team, obviously the Champions League will start. We'll start to see some more rotation. Just as a speculative punt to get a second Man City attacker for 6 million. Obviously, you've already got one, right? But I only have the one right now, and so I've got these transfers burning a hole in my pocket. I gotta want to use them. So that's where I am right now.
I think going triple in my case, and getting Alvarez in for Watkins, and then going into Chef U. You've got Alvarez, Foden, and Haaland, and hopefully it's they actually score some goals this time.
So you're looking at Alvarez too,
very much so. Move. I mean, my moves would be Watkins out for either Wissa or Alvarez. But
okay.
I guess I'd lean Alvarez just because I think Brentford have some trickier fixtures. I think Brentford have played really well the first 2 matches.
Yeah.
And you can't say that the fixtures really flattered them because Spurs is not an easy match for them, and they acquitted themselves really well.
I'm going to wait till Nicolas Jackson's next 1-pointer in game week 3, and then I'll strongly consider.
Yeah, you won't have to wait long.
This will be at like 6.5 million by then, but I still might consider it at that point. All right, so we talked about and Mbeumo's played really well. He's on pens. Just another reminder of how important it is to be on pens. What a great tiebreaker that is for players, right? It's just such a. I mean, he's playing obviously like very far forward. He's playing as an attacker. He's getting tons of minutes. And he's on pens. So sort of like every reason to recommend Mbeumo. It's just like he's like the most. Yeah. He's such a sure thing. To me, him more than anybody. It's like he almost inspired this podcast, right? It's like that he was kind of sitting there as just like a really obvious pick. And I think sometimes the trap that I think I fall into sometimes at the start of the season was I really liked Mbeumo, but it was like, well, I can afford Rashford and Bruno. So I should just do that. It's like even though I maybe would have been better to diversify a little bit and have Mbeumo and just have like 3 million in my bench going into the season, or in my bank, I should say. It's just so hard to do that, right? It's like you feel like you're leaving value on the table or something like that if you don't.
Well, also we believe that Manchester United were going to start the
That's
season
true. That's
far
true. We
better
shouldn't be
than
like
they have.
total hindsight merchants here. But regardless, I think we've already talked about his praise. We've sung his praises a little bit, but I just think that good fixtures on pens, plays a ton of minutes, is kind of the crucial attacking cog in that Brentford team. And Brentford are just, it was just another reminder, right? That like they are just so solidly built, well managed. They buy well. They are, they play well. I mean, they play really tight. I mean, it's already looking like their keeper might be the one with the 4.5 to tar. There's just like a lot of different, I don't know. It's just, I guess it's also a reminder that like preseason can be a little deceptive in terms of our assessment of players and value. I mean, Nicolas Jackson was banging them in preseason. Generally, I wouldn't look at a player who moved from another league right this early on in the season. It's just like it's come back to haunt us all time and again. But then you're like, well, he scored 4 in a preseason. It's like you sort of it's hard not to overrate the preseason a little bit. So who else? Let's see. What do you think about Luis Diaz? And there's sort of just a thought on Liverpool in general. Is Mo Salah now? It's a 5-pointer at home. I mean, a lot of people who captained him. I suppose they did outscore. They did outscore us Holland captainers. So there's that at least. But yeah. It's messy.
I think Liverpool showed. Okay, I kind of walk in through the back door into this argument.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The proof this weekend was there is no value in spending $12.5 million for Mo Salah when you can either have Luis Diaz or Diogo Jota. Doesn't matter which one. And if you're paying the premium for Salah, he will lose you points on pens. Every time you get a pen, you're having the opposite impact you hope to have.
It's so bizarre.
You're losing points.
Yeah.
And Diaz is he looked like this last season at the start of the season before he got injured. He's a crazy person. He's a crazy baller. And the improvisation that he showed with that goal this weekend was, I love it. And I think
beautiful goal.
Yeah, he's got that hunger, determination, and that look in his eye where Diogo Jota is maybe a little bit more of a technician.
So you think you think he's got that dog in him, Luis Diaz? Would you go that far?
Yeah, now we can enter into our native ad read for the hit movie Strays. So this week's Strays got that dog in him is Luis Diaz. Go see the movie Strays.
Yeah, I guess he would be like. I like him. They play away to Newcastle in game week 3, so it's probably another 1 week hold. But I like the way he's played so far. I do think he looks good. I think that it's he would be maybe 3rd or 4th on my midfield transfer list. Here's another one. Okay, we didn't talk about this guy. We talked about Foden. We talked about Mbeumo. Yeah,
I want to poke at that one a little bit more. Why is Luis Diaz that far down the picking order for you? Is it fixtures? Is it you've got concerns about the Liverpool team?
I guess I still have concerns with the Liverpool team. There's still a lot of people who can score in that team, right? So it's sort of feeling still that the goals might be spread around different options. I mean, and Salah hasn't been off to the greatest start to the season, so I assume he's going to start to get really goal crazy the way he does and take the ball off people, and it's like all the things that make him a great fantasy asset.
I agree. I agree with those points. I just didn't want to leave that one on the table. So
totally, yeah. And I think honestly, part of it is just I like Foden a little bit more as an option because I think their team is better, and I think for all the reasons you've sort of articulated, I think Mbeumo is better. For all the reasons we've also talked about, and he's cheaper. He's $1 million cheaper. And so, I guess he'd be like 3rd on my list of players to target. But the other player I think we have to talk about, because this poor guy was great last season and we neglected him. So off to another great start this season. We kind of neglected him again. Solly March, 3 goals in 2 matches, super cheap. Not super. I mean, he's fairly cheap. He's 6.5 million. At what point do we have to actually consider selling March as a player in our squad? Why do we keep overlooking him? Is it just that is just because his role just changed so much under De Zerbi and we just can't quite get used to it? I feel like that's my problem, at least.
Well, I'll give us credit. He was injured coming out of the summer, so we weren't quite sure how much he'd factor into the starting lineup and what kind of form he'd be in. lo and behold, he's in exactly the same form he was at his peak under De Zerbi last season. So I think that the fact that we're not ignoring him now is a credit to us.
That's true.
Josh.
We deserve a lot of credit for saying his name on the pod. So let's move on. We've already done
March.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We talked about forwards. We talked about Alvarez a little bit. I think Isak, I think, again, we're looking at a 2-week sample here, but I think it's okay to start evaluating players you might have overlooked a little bit, right? And I think that Isak falls in that category a little bit for me, where I certainly rate him very highly as a footballer. I was a little anxious about his starting place and where he might play, and I'm feeling pretty confident now that he is. That it feels like Howe is really going to try to make a go of it. I mean, maybe this changes a little bit when the Champions League starts, but that may not change in a way that hurts him, right? Like it may be that Callum Wilson is the Champions League starter, and Isak is. This has happened with Sergio Aguero a few years ago, where there's always some concern about whether Aguero was going to be starting or rotating for the Champions League, and he became like the de facto Premier League forward. It was like Gabriel Jesus was starting all these Champions League matches, and Aguero was starting. It's kind of the dream scenario, right? He became and so we could possibly. I mean, again, it's speculative, but we could possibly see that with Isak this year, where he's sort of the go-to in the Premier League. Because obviously Howe does have 2 great forwards. It seems like he's decided not to. In fact, I think I can say pretty confidently that it looks like he's not going to do that, right? Because they not only do they have, they brought in Harvey Barnes, right, who sort of plays the exact spot where you would, in theory, play Isak if you're playing both them together, right? Yeah. So you have Harvey Barnes and you have Anthony Gordon, and both of them have been off to pretty good starts, and so I think that. I don't know. Maybe Gordon was better in the first match than the second one, but of course, no one looks great away to Man City, right? So it's kind of hard to evaluate those. So I think Isak only 7.6 million. So again, another option for a move if you were looking, if Alvarez didn't appeal, or maybe you already have Alvarez in your squad or something. I don't know, whatever. If you just want to be a little bit different, I think that Isak is up there too. He's in that weird category where his overall ownership is creeping up a little bit, but sort of it feels like in our mini league circles, it doesn't feel like he's still very highly owned, right? And so there's sort of this kind of a little bit of a clash that we're seeing right now in terms of who has him in their squad.
It goes back to the wild card discussion, and I think maybe if you can hold on till game week 6 is when the fixtures really do turn great for Newcastle. In the next 3, they have Liverpool, Brighton, and Brentford, all relatively sturdy teams. But of course, Isak could score against any of them. But starting in game week 6, it's Sheffield United, Burnley, West Ham, Palace. So I think remaking our teams in the mold of Eddie Howe come game week 6 or thereafter is something worth hanging on for.
That's a good point. There's a couple of teams that have some changes in fortunes, and that's a good time to change things around a little bit. I think, by the way, we should have thrown, James Maddison probably should be in that midfield conversation as well. It's just that he's got a injury doubt now, right? So it's kind of hard I don't want to go in here and big up him only to find out that he's out for the next 4 weeks or whatever. So let's see where we are with Maddison later on this week.
Yeah, he's knocked with an ankle injury. Ankle injuries. I guess you got rid of Harry Kane's ankle injuries, so you got to bring in another English player with ankle injuries. It's the circle of life. Yeah, you start wearing those Skechers, Josh, and you'll avoid ankle injuries for good.
I guess so. Yeah, Kane got an assist in his first start, right? But
scored a goal.
He scored 2.
He got an assist and a goal. Yep.
Okay, got it. Well, good for Kane. I am sort of following. I don't know why. I mean, I'm not even English, but there is part of me that's like I do want to see him succeed at Bayern. I'm kind of
me too.
There,
definitely.
Yeah. So one final thing: players we've overlooked. I think defense probably too early to make any real pronouncements here. I would say, if you don't have a Estupiñán, I mean, he's still only at 58.8% ownership. His price is up to, but still, that means 42% don't have, or 41% don't have him, and he's really off to a terrific start. His attacking instincts are fantastic, and I think even with that price rise, I would definitely, if I didn't have him already, be looking to bring him in. Good game week 3 fixture too, home to West Ham.
Yeah, and Udagi had some incredible attacking moments for Spurs against Manchester United. So Udagi starting to get more shine as the Spurs team gels and takes shape. I mean, credit to
It's a good win
Ange.
for them.
Teams that need to gel quickly, Chelsea could take a real lesson from Ange, immediately betting Maddison and players like Udagi in there.
Yep.
Richarlison not faring that well. There's a reason why didn't mention him.
Yeah, not his best start.
What a miserable player he is. If I can be frank with you, Josh.
You're always frank when it comes to Richarlison. You've never you never hid your feelings, and I like that about you.
I mean, I don't know if Rico Henry is a player we haven't considered because we did talk about him a fair bit during the preseason
on the Defender pod. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Flecken, being a 4.5 goalkeeper that you might want to consider. Word to the wise: don't spend a transfer on your goalkeeper if you don't have to. And Rico Henry would be a great replacement for any 4.5 defender that you're not that thrilled with, I think.
Yeah. It is not fun to have Jordan Pickford right now, though. I'll tell you that much, Brandon. I'm not enjoying that experience at all. It's very tempting to go sideways to Fleck, and I don't think I'm going to do it, but I might. I'm holding out that possibility.
I think it was you or some friend of ours was telling us this joke about when you go to like a county fair or a local amusement park ride, don't ever get on a ride / roller coaster in which you can see the power cable. Or you can see where it's plugged in.
I was telling you that. Yes.
So that to me feels like the Jordan Pickford experience is like getting on a carnival ride in which you can see all the moving parts and you don't know if it's going to fly off of its motor at any point.
Feels like he's gonna have a heart attack. He plays so angry. It's a stressful experience watching him play too. All right, well, let's take a break, and I want to talk about Game Week 3, so let's do a clean reset here and look ahead to Game Week 3, which kicks off on Friday, Brandon, with that Chelsea-Luton match. All right, Brian, we're back. Game Week 3 kicks off on Friday with the Chelsea-Luton match, a match where suddenly I don't really know. I don't know what we're getting. I don't know what. I assume Chelsea will win. But it's like, do you know anything about Luton? I feel as in the weeds. Just, I don't know, missing that Game Week 2. It just feels like I need like another restart with Luton.
Yeah. Well, watching them against Brighton the opening weekend of the season, we did kind of get some insight there. And
that's true.
They're not good. They've got a lot of strange looking players who look like they, got called up they got conscripted into playing for Luton from the local.
Carlton Morris looks cool. He's a giant. He looks like he's about 6'5". He's massive.
Sure, they're some of them are weirder looking than others. But
yeah. I'm
not expecting anything from Luton. No one is, Josh. I'm telling you that you're not expecting anything from Luton. Just trust me on that.
No, I think that's right. But I guess, yeah. So I think Jackson is a very, very reasonable transfer, just as a speculative bet, like just to kind of go for it. I do think you could just try to fade this match too if you didn't have Jackson. I don't think that's
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have Jackson and I had like a hole to fill, right? Like maybe I'm freaked out about João Pedro, him not playing anymore. Or I shouldn't say anymore, but him not starting the Game Week 2 match. Probably starts Game Week 3, but it's like my situation with Gabriel now, where I'm like, well, probably starts tomorrow. We'll see. But I think I'd be really tempted to just go to Alvarez instead. And I mean, they play Sheffield United. It's not like they're playing, away to Man United or something like that. Like it's arguably as good a fixture as the Luton match, right? So I think it's reasonable to just ignore Jackson.
Yeah, and I think the problem with this Chelsea-Luton match is you'll get into discussions of how bad are Luton, and you're avoiding the real conversation of how good are Chelsea. And we still have lots of question marks about that. You don't have questions about Man City. I mean, you could
Right.
you could have some friendly debates about captaining Holland or not.
Sure.
You won't catch me having them. But this is a true gift of a game week for you and me, Josh, because we have faded both Newcastle and Liverpool to start the season. So they cancel each other out with the final fixture on Sunday. So we don't have to worry about Liverpool, Newcastle in theory. Hopefully that match doesn't finish like 4-4. That would be miserable.
Yeah, that's true.
But it really is. It's City have a great fixture. United have a great fixture. Arsenal have a great fixture. Spurs have a great fixture. Brighton, I don't know. I'm really jumping all around the fixtures here, but what do you think about this Brighton-West Ham match more specifically? I think we've seen some pretty good stuff from West Ham the first 2 weeks of the season.
I think so too, but I just don't see any reason to think that they're not going to keep conceding goals. I think that's really, and so I mean, to me, I guess you're right. Like, but it's like the Chelsea thing. Like, I feel like I don't know how good Chelsea is, but I do feel like I know how good Brighton is. Like, I feel very confident in saying that Brighton are terrific. And I guess that would matter to me more than the West Ham part of it, right? Just because it's a home match for Brighton. They're in really good form at the moment. So I mean, I guess I feel, I guess Matoma is a player who isn't like super highly owned. We didn't talk about him just because I have him in my squad already, but what I thought we saw some really great goals on Saturday, right?
41% owned. I'd say that's pretty high.
We couldn't call him an overlooked player, could we? But still, it's is that what he is? He's 41% owned.
40.8.
Man, it is crazy, the ownership levels of some of these players. But yeah, I think that is he in your thoughts at all, Brandon, as a possible transfer target?
Yeah, the concern, he'd have to come in for a Manchester United mid. And so this is like real FPL gut check time of, are you willing to, like, all signs point to, yes, dump one of these two Manchester United guys for Mitoma, who's absolutely cooking on a team that is absolutely cooking. And then suddenly I feel like I'm playing a game of Russian roulette or something. It's insane. I need to get over that. But Mitoma's, his solo bolo goal with a hilarious fantasy assist from Estupiñán.
I love it.
It was a thing of beauty. All theories about Wolves being okay obliterated in a heartbeat.
They had those like first 20 minutes where you're like, dang, like they're I mean, they have had some good moments too. I mean, they're just not, they're like, they just can't seem to find that. I mean, I guess they did finally score late in that match. I think, we can't like big up him really because he hasn't scored yet, but I do think that Matheus Cunha has looked good so far for Wolves. I mean, he's had some really good moments, and there might come a time, and they play. Yeah, it'll be interesting. They play away to Everton, away to Palace. They don't really have. Listen, let's not get into Wolves chat here, Brandon. That is a road that podcasters dare not go down for an extended period of time, unless we lose the audience forever. So, so we got like you said, a lot of really interesting matches. I think Arsenal Fulham, that should be really interesting just because, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe we should table it because Arsenal will have played or will be playing that day when people listen to this pod. But I'll read off the full quote here from Andrew Sigel. It says, after 2 weeks, Fulham have the worst XGA of any team in the Premier League. They play Arsenal and City in their next two games. Would you load up on these guys, Foden, Martinelli, etc., over the more trendy pick of getting someone like Jackson in versus Luton? So I guess we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but I mean, Fulham is now without Tim Ream. How concerned are you right now about your Cottagers?
I think, were thrown by a real loop with the whole Mitro saga because he really is such a talisman for that team. And I don't know. I think the club handled it pretty well. It's like they weren't going to sell Mitro for anything less than what they valued him to Saudi Arabia. But it's upsetting. And I think Fulham are still kind of in their, nascent sort of, we're new to the Premier League, finally figuring it out this time around sort of status. Losing Tim Ream, I don't know. Basie, this new center back who they signed in the summer, he's decent. I don't know, but Tim Ream he's the captain. They're just losing a lot of the spine of the team from Mitro. Paulinho is at least back. Paulinho is, their star midfielder. He came off the bench against Brentford. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say. Fulham are in trouble. I think they will struggle to score goals all season. But I do think that they still have enough of the core squad from last season, unless we forget they finished in 10th. They were perfectly equipped to
they won their first
avoid
game.
any relegation conversation. I think they're
Totally.
basically going to be in a battle for 16th place. If I had to guess, they will probably never be mentioned on Always Cheating after this week.
It does not. You're right. It does not feel like they're super fantasy relevant at the moment. Does not also feel like they're going to be going down. I mean, given some of the other squads, it's hard to imagine them being one of the three worst. I just cannot see that.
So many bad teams at the moment. Yeah.
I think Everton have got to be concerned, right? That is a really. They're just there's nothing happening going forward for them. I think that's really
which did Dominic Calvert-Lewin run over that now he's out with a broken cheekbone? So bad.
That's a crazy place to get to. How did he break it? Do we know? Was it like a training ground
he
thing?
got into a collision with Emi Martinez. And they were going for a 50-50 ball. I think the commentary rightfully said that Calvert-Lewin should know to just pull out of a challenge like that,
especially when you've been so widely injured.
Yeah, when you're like Mr. Glass. So I don't know. I don't think I don't think Calvert-Lewin escapes blame for what's been going on with his career the last few years.
Fair enough. And a lot of fashion spreads too. Never good. I feel like if you're going to do the fashion spreads, it's fine. Take that bag, take the money when you can get it. But people will talk if you then basically don't play for 2 years. Yep. So, all right. Well, so I think it's, like you said, lots of really fun fantasy fixtures this weekend. We talked about Bruno and Rashford already. I guess I'm leaning towards a reluctant hold. I would say, in general, that yes, I think there's a lot. When I look at game week 3, I see a lot of focus on this Chelsea-Luton match and probably not enough focus on Man City, Sheffield United. And it kind of feels like they're going to score like 7 goals in that match. Yeah. And we should probably be focused on that. And it's a Sunday match. Who doesn't love to have a big Sunday fixture, right? You get through the meat of the fantasy, the meat of the game week, and then boom, final day, you've got your own little window to watch and root for your team.
Okay, let me ask you this. Vice captaincy. Nicolas Jackson. Mm-hmm. Julian Alvarez. Mm-hmm. Or Marcus Rashford. Or Saka.
That's what I was going to say. The fact that I don't want any of those three and I lean towards Saka probably tells you I need to know about how I'm feeling about Nicolas Jackson right now. It's fine. It's great that the underlying stats are good. I have watched the first 2 Chelsea matches, and I am not blown away by what I'm seeing. It just does not look cohesive. Exactly. And it's not that it's not that they're it's not that he doesn't have moments where he looks good, but it just doesn't feel like, oh my God, it's absolutely. I don't feel like I've come out of either one of those matches thinking, my God, Nicolas Jackson should be on 4 goals right now. And I've definitely had that feeling before about players who've had strong XG stats, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, Mo Salah this happens to him all the time, right? Where he's dominant matches and it just doesn't quite work, right? It's a breakaway and he side foots it and it misses the goal by 4 inches or whatever. These kind of things happen. I mean,
think of a moment. Any moment in which Nicolas Jackson brought the ball under his spell.
Exactly.
Give me one moment that wasn't like an off the ball moment.
Yeah, exactly. And even as a forward, maybe a more traditional central striker, it just doesn't feel like he's sort of leading the line. I don't know. So anyway, I think he's like. I mean, I'm certainly starting him, and I don't even think he's a bad transfer, but I'm just not. I'm feeling a little unsure about what we're going to get from Chelsea out of that match. And so I'm really making, I actually didn't expect to go into this podcast planning to make such a strong case for Julian Alvarez over Nicolas Jackson. But I guess I just got a little spooked by this West Ham performance today. Kind of I don't know. I mean, West Ham it can be a tough place to play. I don't want to diminish them, but it just makes me a little worried about what we're going to get, and maybe the fact that Luton is still a little bit of an X factor too. Just like what are they like? What are they going to try to do? They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this match. What kind of game plan are they going to come up with? I mean, surely their goal is not we're going to go toe to toe with them and try to outscore them 5-4, right? I assume that they're going to the formation is going to be quite defensive, and so that's something to be mentally prepared for. I think Ben Chilwell is like a must own. Like if I didn't have Chilwell, I'd be looking at him for my game week 3 transfer.
So maybe a somewhat less sexy, interesting conversation, but Aston Villa. They came back with a vengeance with a 4-0 win against Everton.
Yeah.
We're talking about dumping Ollie Watkins. Like without even really batting much of an eyelash. Now he hasn't scored, but neither has Nico Jackson. Why do we disrespect Ollie Watkins in this way?
I guess I just and honestly, 5-5 is not even terrible. Right? Like if you looked at that from another lens, look at it as 1 blank and 1 goal with 2 bonus points, right? Like exactly. If we got that either the first 2 weeks, we'd be like, all right, good start for Watkins. I think there's something about 5 that like always feels like a little like meh. It's just hard to get excited about 5 points. And but yes, I mean, he's off to a good start. He actually had quite a good chance in the Everton match. He had a moment where he sort of it was very similar to the Salah goal that I was describing a minute ago, or the near Salah goals that he sometimes scores, right? Where he had a moment, he kind of side footed and it just rolled maybe a foot away, but just sort of points to there was that moment near the end of last season, right? Remember, it felt like he was every single match he was scoring. It was incredible. It was like you get to the 95th minute and like you knew somehow he was still gonna, and he's not quite in that zone yet. And I'll be totally honest, I think part of the reason why I'm considering it is because I really like the look of my team this week. I even going to my bench, I like the look of my squad, and so and I have 2 transfers. It just feels like
huge buyer guy.
It's just yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically it's like a moment when you can get away with a luxury transfer, and that's sort of how I'm viewing it, right? It's a slight luxury transfer because the rest of the squad looks okay, and I have decided somewhat reluctantly to give Bruno and partially I think because I don't know which of the 2 to sell, and I have this like I don't want to have buyers. It feels like whichever one I decided I would sell.
Buyer's remorse. That would be a great
seller's
team
remorse.
Name.
Seller's remorse. I'm like, I feel like if I drop Bruno, he's going to have 2 pens. If I drop Rashford, he's going to score an assist. Do you know what I mean? Like that. It's actually a terrible way to manage, like a sort of fear-based managing, but I just don't know. It feels like I need to give them both 1 more week before I decide which one I want to drop. I will say I plan to drop one of them. I think that game week 3 is probably the last time I have both of them. I'm just not sure which one to drop yet.
It's a real Dread Pirate Roberts sort of situation, right? Like I'll most likely transfer one of you in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that could be a factor when you think about freeing up money. I mean, if you decide, you know what, I do want to give. I mean, the problem is you can kind of afford almost everybody right now. But let's say you wanted to just go for it with Mo Salah, right? They're back home for game week 4. You're like, I'm gonna go for it. It wouldn't be that hard, go from Watkins to Alvarez, go from Bruno to Mbeumo, right? You've suddenly freed up 3.5 million. That's actually enough to go from Rashford to Salah in game week 4. So there's your considerations. There's no reason to not think about what your 3rd transfer might be, right, when you make these other ones. So anyway, just something to keep in mind.
Definitely. Yeah, I like it. This is the game week 3. Let's brand it right now. It's the game week of luxury transfers. So
the luxury transfer. That's another good team name.
We want to hear. We want to hear about your luxury transfers, those car commercials ahead of Christmas time, where you give your spouse a car in the driveway with a big bow on it. Those are the only kind of transfers I want to see this week.
A lot of Lexus transfers, exactly. All right, Brandon, that's the pod. We'll be back on Thursday with a pod for our Patreon supporters. If you would like to support the podcast, we'd love it. We'd love it if you did. You can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. You get the bonus podcasts and access to the Slack and mini leagues and mugs. Brandon, I was at our friend Noah and Louise's place yesterday, and I saw the always cheating mug, and it really is beautiful. Or not mug, excuse me, the glass,
pint glass,
pint glass.
Yes,
and I didn't know it was raised lettering like that. It really is. It's quite a fancy glass. It's not one of these like kind of stamped on things. It looks.
We
looks
collaborate with the best production partners in Latvia. And they're looking out
wonderful.
for us.
Yeah, Latvia. Yeah, it's a Russian Georgia. Like, anywhere we can find a good partner, we'll do it. Very Baltic.
Yeah,
heavy for us.
Go to our Twitter feed at Hail Cheaters if you want to take a look at the pictures of these pint glasses that our Volkswagen and producer patrons are posting. That's what you get at the two highest tiers at our Patreon level. And at any tier, whichever fits best for you, you can also at the lowest tier simply get access to our Discord, where there's lots of fun chit chat happening morning, noon, and night during matches, off peak matches, etc. Speaking of producers, Josh, why don't you go ahead and thank the kings and queens at the producer level?
Will do. I don't get to do this very often, so I'll do it with relish. Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wagner-Lodell, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson. Actually, Brian Chin also posted a photo of the pint glass. So it was nice to see people getting those and sharing the photos. Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Mings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Valgar Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Paul Herzig, Heath Cram, Thomas Tisloff, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Julio Pena, Linus Winterstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Fro Jacobson, and our two newest producer patrons, Brennan and Daniel Hart. That's just Brennan, by the way. It's not. They're not a duo. It's not Brennan and Daniel Hart. It's Brennan, one name like Madonna, and then it's Daniel Hart after that.
Fantastic,
so thank
fantastic.
you. Yeah.
All right. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get podcasts. Follow us wherever you get social media for all this information and more. Visit alwayscheating.com. Any last words, Josh?
Thanks for listening. Good luck in Game Week 3.